Hello again and welcome to the Warhammer 40K Imperial Guard Tactics video. Now before we get into today's video, I want to say a huge thank you to Christian Augst for sending in some pictures of his absolutely fantastic old school Scions with some air support. Loads and loads of Valkyries. I count, like 6 flyers in this army? Absolutely incredible. Vultures, Valkyries, Vendettas, really cool air support army with a good amount of really cool old school sounds. Thank you for sending these pictures, August. These are absolutely fantastic. Now, for anyone who wants to send in some pictures to me for me to use in my videos, all you have to do is post them on my Facebook page. There's a link down in the description below and I will use them. I love showing off the cool armies that you guys have and just my way of giving a little bit back to this community by showing off some of the cool pictures that you guys send in to me. Now, let's get on with the video today. Now, there's been a recent thread, and this topic comes up all the time. A recent thread on Daka Daka, though, about should Guardsmen be increased in points? Specifically just Guardsmen. And the thread itself was saying that Guards, because of all the synergies and buffs that can be put on Guardsmen, they should be 7 points per model, and that all Guard characters should cost at least 50 points per model. Now, obviously, what this guy's saying is ridiculous. So, I can understand some people saying that Guardsmen should go up by a point. I don't like it, but I can sort of understand it. But to say the characters need to go up in points is just absolutely ridiculous. And when you see this kind of argument being made, Guardsmen need to go up in points, it's always made by players who don't really understand the fundamentals of the Imperial Guard. They don't understand why the Imperial Guard are very powerful. But they also don't really understand how to beat the Imperial Guard at the same time. And you often get this kind of attitude from middle of the road players. People who are pretty strong in their, pretty good at their gaming group. Their gaming group might be quite a closed community, maybe some basement battles, and maybe they've started going to a local club or they've gone to their first few tournaments and they've been absolutely smashed by some Imperial Guard. Or maybe looking at a really old school player who's had the same army for ages and ages and ages and doesn't want to adapt, and he just thinks that his current army is just unable to beat the Guard. Well, I that's where you tend to find these complaints coming from. But the key thing is it tends to be people who don't really understand or aren't willing to understand how the Imperial Guard functions on the tabletop. Because we've discussed this before, but I think post-chapter approved and some people being a bit butthurt about Guard getting some points decreases, I think it does need to be reiterated again. If you take a look at your basic Guardsmen, now it's not the best way to look at them, but it'll come clear in a second. But if you take a look at your basic Guardsmen in a 1 versus 1 setting versus any other main line infantry unit in the game, Guardsmen have the worst stats and equipment, hands down. Some of you might be saying, that's crazy. What are you talking about? Guard are some of the most point efficient infantry out there. Oh yeah, they are. Guard are really good. But as a main infantry unit, as a line infantry unit, they are the worst. They only hit on a 4+ in combat and in shooting. They only have a strength 3 and a toughness of 3, which means universally they are wounded by practically everything on 3s. Most dedicated to anti-horde weapons, like assault cannons or shuriken cannons, wound them on 2s. So Guardsmen, and they only have a 5+ save. Most of the time, they'll be on a 6+ save. But at best, they only have a 5+ save. And the leadership of a basic Guardsman is only 6. It's 7 with a sergeant, but it's only 6 of the basic Guardsmen. Okay? His lasgun is strength 3. Again, that is the weakest strength of any main infantry weapon in 40k. It's rapid fire 1, which is pretty standard. But even the bolter outclasses the lasgun. The shuriken catapult, which is considered not a great weapon, outclasses the lasgun in a one-on-one fight. Splinter rifles, even sluggers and shooters, even termagants are at worst equal, but actually in many ways better than the Imperial Guardsmen. Yes, they're very similar in stats and everything, but and the termagant only has a 6+ save. But the termagant's basic gun is strength 4. It is an assault weapon, which means it can which it sort of that balances out. But the termagant itself is fearless. There's basically no way of getting rid of Tyrannid synapse these days. So termagant itself is fearless, and can be taken in very large units, up to 30 termagants in one blob. And remember what Games Workshop said about conscripts. The reason they got nerfed and the reason why they made conscripts the same price as guards is because of the squad size you can take them in. So clearly Games Workshop places a huge importance on squad size. Termagants are taken in blobs of 30, and if they're in 20 or more, they can reroll 1s to wound, something Guardsmen can't do. If you have a termagant versus a Guardsman, termagant has potential to wound on 3s rolling 1s. So you have to. So even a really bad infantry unit like a termagant is at its worst equal to a Guardsman. If you take a look at a basic Imperial Guard officer, company commander, it's only 30 points. It's fair enough. If he goes toe to toe, 1-on-1 with any other character out there, he's going to die. He's going to die. Now, a lot of people will say, "Oh, but you can take 2 company commanders for every Space Marine captain." This is very true, but thanks to the rule of 3, that doesn't really get me very far. I can't spam like 7, 8 company commanders for 3 Space Marine captains. I can only take 3 company commanders, and in a one-on-one fight, that company commander dies hands down to any other character any other standard character out there. We're talking captain equivalent. Even Orc mechs will beat a company commander in combat easily. If you take a look at the basic Leman Russ, it's an absolutely fantastic piece of kit, but it has a real core weakness, which is if you get into combat with it, you can pretty much lock that thing down for the rest of the game. It can't move fast enough. Its maximum move is 10 inches. It can't move fast enough to get away from you. So even if it falls back 10 inches away, standard infantry unit for another enemy unit is 6 inches. You only have a 4-inch charge your next turn. You can just keep chasing it, keep tying it up. Now, what am I saying here? Am I saying that, all these guard units are shit? No, they're not. Individually, they aren't very good. But if you take 3 infantry squads, a company commander, and a Leman Russ, and you put all that together, you have a force which can easily take and hold an enemy objective. There's little that can stand up to that. The Imperial Guard, the Guardsmen, they bring the numbers. They have the ability to screen that Leman Russ. The officer is able to use buffs, like orders, to increase the damage and mobility of those Guardsmen. But on his own is useless, but when synergized with Guardsmen, it's fantastic. The Leman Russ now can't be tied up because the Guardsmen are screening it effectively, and the Leman Russ provides the much needed firepower that the regular Guardsmen can't really bring to the table. So the reason why Imperial Guard is so strong is synergy, is combined arms. The Imperial Guard, as an army, as a faction, as a force that you collect, as models that you build and paint, demands synergy. It demands combined arms. Now, obviously, there's different ways you can do this. You can have like Hellhounds instead of Lehman Russes. You can have heavy weapon squads instead of Lehman Russes. You can have, you can have your Scions. But the general principle that we're talking about here is that the Imperial Guard requires synergy and combined arms. The individual parts of the Imperial Guard are weak, but when put together, they are incredibly strong. They complement each other incredibly well. So does that mean that Imperial Guard should receive buffs? Not buffs, should receive points increases, nerfs? Because it seems like I'm arguing the point for them on Daka Daka, that they should go up in points because they have all these buffs that you can put on them. Well, the answer is no. Now, the reason why the answer is no is, well, there's several reasons. First one is, number one, it takes a certain level of player skill to put together a list which has good synergy. It will take a certain amount of practice, a certain amount of understanding of one's army and one's army's capabilities to put together a good Imperial Guard list. But number two, which is the main reason, is our greatest advantage is also our greatest weakness. It's a double-edged sword. You see, the Imperial Guard is an army which is extremely susceptible to an opponent's good target priority. Our army is very clearly cut into different sections. Guardsmen are one section. A Lehman Russ is another section. An officer is a third section. Each one of these, if you remove one of these elements, the other two can't stand up on their own. Without the Lehman Russ or other fire support unit, the regular Guardsmen will struggle, unless you brought in obscene numbers, will struggle to take ground, will struggle to deal damage to the enemy. Without the Guardsmen, the Lehman Russ will be tied up. Without the Guardsmen, the officer is essentially useless. So if your opponent is savvy and a good opponent, he will find it relatively easy to kick the legs out from underneath you, to kick the chair from underneath you. It's one of the reasons why I always say you never want to go to a battle without 4 Lehman Russes, because your opponent will very quickly identify your Lehman Russes as being a target priority, and in their turn 1 will easily kill 1 Lehman Russ. Guaranteed. You need at least 3 to have the firepower to need what you're going to do. Essentially, good target priority is from your opponent is the main way to counter the Imperial Guard. And the reason I say this is the Imperial Guard is not a complicated army to face down. Our units don't have ridiculous levels of special rules like Eldar, or crazy levels of durability like Necrons, for example. Necrons traditionally very tough. I know they're struggling a little bit in 8th edition, but they're still, they've still got some good special rules like I'll Be Back, which can be buffed. Things like Dark. We don't have just clearly broken units like the Dark Elder Talos. We don't have meta breaking or meta defining armies like Imperial Knights. We don't have cool gimmicks or like the Blood Angel Smash Captain. We don't have any of that stuff. What we have is men and tanks and guns, and that's what we bring in a large quantity. But that means we are an easy army for an opponent when they get their head around it to understand what they need to do to beat us. An example I like to use is my main opponent. Many of you who have been following this channel have watched many of my battle reports. My main opponent is Johnny, Blood Angel player through and through. He's got his own YouTube channel now called Scholar Progenium. Go and check it out. It's got some really good all you need to know tactics videos. But he has played against my Imperial Guard for over a decade for almost 15 years now. Now, obviously, that's different editions, and sometimes he's taken a break. But the basic tenets. But you could say he has played against my competitive Imperial Guard for the last 5 years, since I really got into the Mordians. And he uses mono Blood Angels. And his secondary army is mono Death Watch. 2 armies which are not even considered on the same level as the Imperial Guard. Considered well below. Not considered top tier. Mono Blood Angels Smash Captains are great. Mono Blood Angels, not so much. Death Watch, until the recent chapter approved, not even considered a top tier army. Considered bottom middle. He regularly beats me. Our win to loss ratio against each other is equal. We probably win for every game that I've won against him, he's won a game against me. Why is this? Because he knows his army very well, but more importantly, he knows the Imperial Guard. He knows the Imperial Guard better than many Imperial Guard players, because he's faced it so many times in so many different forms and iterations. He knows what is needed. Doesn't have to list tailor against me. Don't be people thinking that means he list tailors. He doesn't. But he can turn up with a balanced list, and I can turn up with a balanced list. No gimmicks, and it will be an even fight, despite the fact that, according to the internet, our 2 armies are not even on the same level. Because he knows he has good target priority, and he knows what he needs to do to beat my Imperial Guard. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's the whole point. It's balance. It's about a 50-50 win ratio against each other. So there you go, guys. I know there's going to be a lot of people who are going to disagree with this, but honestly, Imperial Guard are a very well balanced army. We're a very point efficient army, and we're just generally we're a solid army. You don't see Mono Guard going around winning loads of tournaments, though. Bear that in mind. You see Loyal 32 being used alongside other armies, but you don't see Mono Guard winning a lot of tournaments. What you do see is Mono Guard placing very well in many tournaments. We're not top tier OP cheese. We're just a solid army, as we should be. We're a professional fighting force. We should be solid. But there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave lots of comments. Tell me what you think, and I'll see you guys next time.